Hello.
Hello. Who's there? Is that Susan?
Yeah, it's me. I'm sorry I had my speaker on.
It's
A
quite all
neighbor
right.
just
It's quite
a
all
neighbor
right.
popped in. I'll shut off here.
Well, you don't have to, really. Nobody else is talking. I'd have to listen to me or my cricket. Now it stops. Now when I would like to have a cricket noise, we have a cricket in the house. Well, we have maybe two crickets in the house. There's one in the kitchen that entertains me in the morning. And there's one that I think is in the bathroom. It's kind of hard to tell. It seems to have found a good echo chamber and is enjoying itself, making lots of noise. So not much sound for anybody to listen to. So you might as well talk. Anybody who would like to. Anybody got any questions? I did not put any. Well, I should have. Um, got being inundated with boxwood tree moths, and I think we've talked about that enough. That, if anybody needs to know about boxwood tree moth, I can tell you what I just told Gloria about her boxwood. She's been watching them, and sure enough, she's got problems with the tree moth. She's wondering if it's too windy. Yes, it's too windy today. Um, Unless you're going to use something that you drench the soil with and let the plant take it up. And this isn't the best time of year to do that. That would be a springtime application, better to spray it on the plant. And then Ace has asked me to please look at her apple tree. I haven't looked at the pictures yet, but she said it's almost devoid of leaves. And I think he told me that fertilizer would help. And it does. It's amazing that if you water and fertilize a crab apple well in the springtime, it leaves out and finishes leafing out more quickly than crab apples that aren't getting that kind of water and a little extra fertilizer. And the amount of time that the leaf spends expanding itself and then growing a cuticle to protect itself, that amount of time, if you can shorten that amount of time, you shorten the amount of time that the fungus can get in. I read this a number of times in a number of tree care books, but I saw it at our previous house. Our neighbor, who was very, very parsimonious, the word. It wasn't like he was stingy, but he knew exactly how much he was spending on everything. And he didn't ever water or fertilize the lawn. When they sold the house, they sold it to a young couple, and the guy was just thrilled with the lawn. He was out there all the time fussing with the lawn. He watered the lawn, he did a 5-step program on it. Steve and I talked about how we went from having a gardener next door to a greenskeeper next door. And it wasn't until the second spring that they were there that I realized, wait a minute, that tree used to be bare every August. It was actually two radiant crab apples. They used to be absolutely bare, but with Tom watering and fertilizing, the trees were still fully green in August and never had been for 30 years before that. So it's kind of a cool example. I wish that I had taken, we probably did, took pictures of it with it bare, but you'd have to have the whole sequence to follow that up. Does anybody have any questions that things they want to ask about? I do have a full slate of things that Steve and I came up with to talk about.
There was the spice. Karen in chat said the spice bush caterpillar wraps itself similarly in spice bush leaves.
All right, all right. We'll relay that one to Sonia. Brenda might
And
be here tonight too.
Gretchen has a hand up.
Gretchen, go ahead.
I'm just noticing that the oak tree is losing like leaves, little at the end, like they
What-
they fly in the yard. I pick up like five or six of these just in a little area of
Are they full?
green leaves just come
Are they
off.
are they full size leaves?
Yeah.
Chances are good that squirrels are biting them off. They
Okay.
they go for the moisture that's inside the twigs, the smallest twigs. There was a at the back of the book called Insects That Feed on Trees and Shrubs. There's a section on squirrels and a report by a couple of made by a couple of grad students working on uh, our arboriculture program that watched two squirrels take 1,100 twigs off of trees in a period of X number of days. And
Oh,
I thought,
wow.
I can't believe that they actually counted all of the twigs coming off, but yeah, it's pretty common. It happens more often in the early spring, late winter, early spring if it's dry, because the trees are pulling up more sap then, but chances are good. That, and there's also a twig girdler. I love it that they name insects what they do, but there is an insect that will bite off a twig. It doesn't bite off, it eats off the part until it becomes breakable. I know they do it to sycamores. I know that there are twig girdlers for various trees, and what they're doing is the insect in its larval form is in the twig, and so it needs to get down to the ground to make sure that it's going to be more protected for the winter. So one or the other, and if you look at the end of the twig, you might be able to tell whether it looks like it gradually lost bark or was bit off.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I always give these long answers to short questions, don't I? Hi, Sue. You go ahead.
He also has a hand up.
Hi, how are you, Janet and Steve? My
Yes,
question
good.
is, I'm thinking of putting in two hydrangea plants this fall, and I'm wondering if I'm not able to get them in until maybe the third week in October, is that too late? Would it be better?
No,
until
not at
spring?
all too late. Once upon a time, people told us, we had this warning that said, you live in the north and you should get all your planting done by the 1st of October or the plants will heave out of the ground. And that's totally untrue. That
Okay.
traces all the way back to when the immigrants were coming over here and colonizing. They had no idea. All they knew was it was really a lot colder than it was in Europe. And so they were doing things early. But no, that's a good time to plant.
Okay,
An improperly planted plant will heave up out of the ground, though.
Yeah.
So, and also, you're helping that plant so much by getting those roots free.
Right. And
Yeah.
Storing them over winter.
and getting them in the ground where they've got time to spread out before the ground freezes and then spread again in the spring before the leaves open, which means that they have two cool seasons in a row to grow roots before they have to support leaves out in the wind and the heat. Yeah,
okay, great. Thanks so much.
you're welcome. You used to be that all the advertising told us fall is the time for planting. But then in the 70s, when the marketing people started telling the garden center people you really could make more of spring, they started pushing everything towards spring. But it used to be that fall was the time to plant. Lost that stuff along the way. Let's see, who we got? Anybody else? Actually, it's just about time to get started, I think. Oh,
3
no.
minutes, according to my
3
phone.
minutes. We can solve all the problems of the world in 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Politicians who tell us that they can solve world problems in a day, so why can't we do things in 3 minutes? I love this dragonfly.
We'd accomplish about the same as the politicians have in the day.
Yeah,
Nothing.
yeah. I have to listen the next time a dragonfly flies over. When that cicada flew over my head, I was planting a tree this week, last weekend, and a cicada flew right over my head and landed in the tree I was planting about 2 inches above my head, and it thrummed like the hummingbird does, but at a different frequency. It was a little more like a helicopter, and I thought, wow, I get it. I'm gonna have to listen to a dragonfly too. When it landed on the twig above my head, it then began to sing, except I didn't know it was a cicada at the time, and I would never call it singing. It was a scream right in my ear. That is so loud when you're right next to it. I not knowing what it was, I jumped backwards and scared the cicada, and as it took off, I realized what it was and what the noise had been. What a loud noise. What an incredibly loud noise from such a little tiny thing. Oh, prevent the winter heaving. The best planting tips are to loosen the soil around the root ball and make sure that it's moist, and to loosen the root ball enough that the roots can grow out at least an inch or a couple of inches, because they'll hold it in. When things heave, it's because they are lighter weight, don't keep the water as well with all those roots in them and the lighter weight material. And like a cork, they kind of pop out when the soil shifts. But most of the time, when things heave, there's more to do with the roots not being active anymore. So they used to say the plant will heave and die. And then a study, and it's back in the 30s, they were looking at winter wheat and why winter wheat didn't make it. The plants didn't heave and die. They died and heaved. So the best thing that you can do is loosen the soil around it and keep both the ball and the soil around it moist enough that the roots will grow out into it and they'll hold themselves down real well. Mulch
And
helps too.
mulch. Yep. Organic mulch. Fine. You could probably do some leaves too.
Yeah, I did a garbage can over one of our, I think it was the dwarf over spruce we planted when Sony was in kindergarten. I just, after the ground froze, I just took a plastic garbage can and tipped it over the whole plant and put a block on top of it. Said there, stay there. And I thought maybe I'm blocking the sun and maybe it's going to photosynthesize some in the winter, but I decided it was worth a try and it was beautiful when it came out. Just about the same as covering it with leaves, but not quite so much airflow.
So do we want to officially start and then take the hand or do the hand now? Somebody's got a hand up. iPhone 2.
Let's do the hand now.
All right. Hello, iPhone 2.
iPhone 2. Oh, is that Margie? I've forgotten who
Hi,
iPhone.
Janet.
Hello.
Hi, no, this is Nancy.
Oh, hi, Nancy.
Hi. Not a question, but kind of a question. When are we going to be done with Japanese beetles?
We
We
should.
thought we
We should.
and then David found like 10 more.
Yeah, they don't stop feeding until they stop laying eggs, and they stop laying eggs when the ground is cold. So I don't know what the
Oh.
temperature is that we have to have the soil drop down to, but it's through September. So you're still,
Oh, okay.
yeah. They'll start dying
All
off
right.
though.
It
I
won't be
checked my
as
journal.
intense.
I checked my journal last year, and we were seeing the last of them about August 20th. And so I'm thinking, why are these still hanging around?
A different year, different weather, different
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah.
Yep.
No
Okay,
2
thank
years,
you.
no 2 years are ever the same. No two plants
Yep.
are the same. No 2 years are ever the same. Okay,
Yep.
Stephen, you can start us officially.
Good evening and welcome. Now you're laughing over my choice.
Sorry.
Hi, and welcome to Free for All Friday. All gardeners are welcome. This is our 53rd edition of it, and I'm Stephen Nicola.
I'm Janet McConovich. This is gardenatz.org, and we're all about talking to gardeners among gardeners because between the bunch of us right now, there's 25 people here, and shortly there will be more, I'm sure. The more that we talk, the more that we live 25 years instead of one. We're hearing what happens in different gardens, and we've learned it a lot ourselves in working in gardens for 40 years. And that's why we started the website, so we'd have a place to put what we've learned and to ask people to contribute with emails and texts onto what they've learned. And it adds up to a lot. And a lot is not enough. What did Mike ask us at the hockey practice the other day, Steve? He said, I don't, he says, I don't know very much. And he said that he gardened, but I don't know very much. I quoted to him from Alan Lacey, a philosopher gardener, and he's retired now from being a professor of philosophy. But he said you can spend 1,000 years in one corner of one small garden and you still will not know what the heck is going on out there. And I believe that. It's just so much.
Me too.
Yeah. So Free for All Fridays, tell other people about them. Tell them if they just go to our website and click Friday's page, there's a link there. All they've got to do is be here at 7 and they can hear what's been going on that week in our garden and yours. Are there other questions? Is that hand still up? No.
No.
Our daughter Sonia sent us this. She still raises a few caterpillars if she comes across the eggs while she's out walking with the dogs. And it's fun to do, and you'll see why. There's a monarch that has crawled across from having finished eating his last milkweed and starting to wander, which means he's looking to make a chrysalis. He bridged across to the stinging nettle. That's what this plant is. Stinging nettle that the red admiral is living in. The red admiral closes the leaf around himself and then eats the leaf from the inside. And the red admiral caterpillar is in there eating. Well, the monarch caterpillar crawled along on the stem and chose to walk out onto that leaf that the red admiral was in. And this is one of the reasons that Sonia is likes to do this, is that as the monarch approached the leaf, the red admiral began shaking the leaf vigorously, even though he was in chrysalis already. He began saying, "Get off, it's mine, I'm here already." And we wouldn't know that that would happen, except there we are, having it in the house looking straight at it. So the monarch did move someplace else. And I could show you, I think I should show you. So he just sent me today a picture of what the Red Admiral has done. Here's the Red Admiral now. He's webbed some leaves together and pulled them around his chrysalis. And look at the beautiful chrysalis with spikes down the back, gold dots along the way. And you see the webbing he's used to pull the leaves together around him. It's called a hibernaculum, when insects pull something around themselves or roll themselves inside a leaf to spend the winter. But I think that kind of thing is very cool. It's the kind of stuff that makes it interesting to me to be out in the garden, even if none of the plants are doing what they're supposed to do. Somebody out there, something that lives out there is doing what they do.
Yeah, it sure is fun to find things like that too.
Yeah. And just before we got started, so I added it as just text, Brenda Sattler, who was Brenda Zedek, as she wrote, Raising Butterflies and Moths in the Garden and Raising Butterflies in the Garden. She's a Monarch Watch conservation specialist and goes, I think, every year to Mexico to the monarch overwintering places. And she said she wanted to tell you that if the monarch is butterflies brought up tonight, at the Monarch Science Symposium.
She is here.
Oh, Brenda, well, then you just tell us about this. Oh, well, I should say, if you don't mind turning on your microphone, Brenda, you could tell us about this. But if
Yes, I go to Mexico. I've been going every February since 2009. And so this year at Monarch Watch down at the University of Kansas, when we had our Monarch Science Symposium, we found out a lot of stuff that Mexico is doing to help the monarchs. And in here, you can see on the slide that they have been working diligently to reduce the illegal logging. So it's gone from 1,236 acres to only 5 acres. So they're working on that to try to make sure there's a place for the monarch butterflies to overwinter. Also, because of climate change, and like I said, I've been going since 2009, and I stay in Mecheros, which is a little village right there at Cerro Pelon. And we've always just got on the horses and gone up the mountain right there. Well, because of climate change, the elevation at that part of Cerro Pelon now is too warm. And the monarchs need a certain temperature and humidity to be able to spend the winter there. So now we have to drive 45 minutes around the other side of the mountain and go up the other side of the mountain, which is higher elevation, to see the monarchs. And the scientists down there have determined that before long, that I believe it's within 65 years they're believing, and I didn't put that in there. I meant to put that in there, but I believe it's within 65 years, global warming is going to affect the mountains so bad that El Rosario, Sierra Chinqua, this part of Cerro Pelon it will be too warm for the monarchs. So Professor Cez Romero is working with the people there, and they are planting the Oyamo fir trees in mountains of higher elevations that are close to El Rosario and Sierra Chinqua, in hopes that from 50 to 70 years from now, those monarchs will be able to, with these close in the area of the other ones, be able to go up there and overwinter. So I'll let you know, and like in 65 years or so, I'll let you know if the monarchs make it there. But they are doing a lot of work, and I'm so glad that they are on top of things.
That sounds wonderful. I'm glad to hear that the illegal logging is going down, and I wish that we could do more everywhere. There's a great book called The Tree Thieves that is frightening how much is being done here in America as well as in South America and in Central America and throughout the world. And it's also scary to read about climate change, that the plants can't move very easily. And in New Hampshire and Vermont, they're doing the same thing. They're planting species higher up and planting more southern species lower down to see if they can get a jump on the change that's inevitably going to come. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you very, very much.
And just one other thing, for everyone that plants milkweed, I want to thank you so much, because that's the only thing monarchs use the caterpillars feed on. And without milkweed, we would lose our migration. We would lose our monarchs in this area here.
And I'm going to add that if you plant the milkweed, don't cut it down early unless you're just pinching it back. I've noticed that the monarchs here in our garden, they're going to go for the young seedling plants and the regrowth where a plant broke to lay the eggs, that last batch of eggs. So don't be too neat and tidy if you're growing milkweed and trying to encourage the monarchs. Thank you, Brenda. We've been weeding and wishing for rain. I made the mistake of telling the cloud that was barely sprinkling on me that if he would do that all night long, it would be great, and it immediately stopped. So be careful what we say to the weather gods. But we're wishing for rain because it's too dry right now for the transplants and divisions that they have to wait. And so the to-do list for later in the fall keeps growing longer and longer. But I've been weeding primarily on the edges of the property that are actually the neighbor's edges on 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides, all 4 sides of our 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, because of the way we're situated, we have 4 neighbors that we run property lines with. And all 4 of them have told me that it's okay if I've explained that particular weeds that we're dealing with, it doesn't do any good to take them off of your side of a edge that's only about 10 feet wide, because they're just going to creep across. So if I'm weeding, can I come across on your side? It causes some issues for me because I feel like I'm intruding on people's lives. So I try to do it when nobody's home. But I've been going along Jason's side here in this picture, working underneath the hedges and pulling things out. It's my bindweed area. When we moved in, it was covered with bindweed, and we're down now to where if I go out every 2 weeks, I'll find a little bit of bindweed like you see right there. And I follow it down to where it's coming from and get out as much root as I can. It's coming from underneath the sod now, so I don't do too much digging. I will weed on someone's side, but I'm not going to rip up their sod. And some of them are just annual weeds. This is a 5-foot, almost 6-foot tall lamb's quarter. It's just one of them, which is good because when they get big, they are like iron rods in the ground trying to pull them out. This is common yellow sorrel, or oxalis stricta, that mostly people see in their gardens as something small, like you see on the side here. But if you let it grow, as it has here on the edge of our dog yard fence, it's a pretty big plant, and it's a perennial, and it's got not just the root that comes up when you pull, but side roots that break off and come back afterwards. But this is also the one that I saw the sparrow eating the seeds on the other day, and I'm not going to take that away. A lot of the annual weeds get really big, really growing on the edge, which is the edge that I'm working on. This is a crabgrass plant, and we talked about this last week about how they root from the nodes and can take those and drop those seeds, hundreds of them, 3 feet away. You just want to get that out before you see brown seed pods. You see brown seed pods, you go, darn, they've dropped seeds already. This is prostrate spurge, which literally lays on the ground and tries to look like grass and it goes under the mower. It's an annual too. The lamb's quarters and other plants, they have identifiable features, and it's nice to have the names. Lamb's quarters is edible. If you wanted to, you could collect the leaves and put them in a salad. I have not developed a taste for them, but they're not like asparagus, which when I'm weeding, I'll eat the asparagus that's coming up. they have a distinctive cluster of flower buds that, again, you don't want them to go to seed. Was it this plant, Steve, that we saw? Yes, there was lamb's quarters going to seed in our garden, and you counted how many birds in there at one
Well,
time?
it was a 5 by 5 plant, and there were 38 sparrows,
Finches of various kinds.
finches of some kind
Yeah,
in there
yeah.
that we could see in the photograph.
Right, right. There were probably others bouncing around and they were coming and going. This is a perennial, it's pokeweed. And I wanted to show you the root because these were not easy to get out. This is not even 1 year old pokeweed. And this root is, and I'm digging them out all along the way. When Jason moved in, he had pokeweed along the side, another side of his yard, 8 feet tall. And he asked me if he wanted to keep those. And I said, he said, do I want those? I said, no, you don't want those, but the seed is still in the ground and they come up distinctive reddish stems. And the root, there's my toe to give you an idea how big that root is. That's 1 year. And as long as I break it off deep enough, if I leave the crown in there and snap the top off, there's buds already for a good 5 or 6 stems to replace that one stem. But you got to put a fork in the ground and loosen, and when the soil is dry, it's hard to do. I also do both sides of the edging beds, property line beds, because we have a lot of poison ivy in the neighborhood, and the birds take the seeds, they eat the berries. Yes, it gets white clusters of white, waxy white berries. They like to eat those berries, and of course they're going to drop them in their bird droppings into our garden since we invite them in. Now this is a 1 year, it just started in the spring because it was not there in the spring, vine of poison ivy. It germinated here, came up and branched, and has about 18 inches of vine already working its way out, which will root and take off from there. And I'm very good at recognizing poison ivy, and we're all sensitive to it. It depends on how many times you've run into it. Steve's very sensitive to it. And so I watch for it and tell other people you're looking for the leaves are in threes, and in our part of the country at any rate, most of the time those leaves have thumbs. If you imagine this as a hand, 4 fingers down here and a thumb sticking out the side. They have thumbs, and they also are alternate, where there's a leaf on one side. See how this attaches down here, and then the next leaf comes from the other side. They alternate sides of the branch, of the main branch that they're coming from. And that distinguishes them from box elder and raspberries, and the number of leaflets distinguishes them from Virginia creeper. And I'm very aware of what drought does when you plant new plants. This is a plant we planted in June. In June, we planted this in June for a friend. This is a 7 sun shrub, and it was right before everything turned into 95-degree days. And as you can see, it's out in the boondocks. So although we asked them to water it every day, the amount of leaves that it had and the density of leaves from being in a nursery where it was watered every single day, it's caused it to scorch most of the leaves. And I was disappointed when I saw it. And then I walked closer to it and saw that the leaves they scorched, but they didn't fall because they're still alive. See the green on the leaves? And the green on the stems of these have all developed since it's been in. This is all the flower buds of 7 sun shrubs are getting ready to open. And there's the green on the leaves. And there's buds set for next year. There's 2 buds right there. So I told them, they were very, very concerned that I was going to be upset and that they were going to have to plant another plant. I said, no, this one's going to make it. Same thing with the tulip tree that we planted for them. Now, the tulip tree doesn't have that density of foliage, and it has a good root system that we were able to spread out pretty wide, all the way 18 inches in a couple of directions. But it was grown in the shade, and we moved it out into the full sun and the wind. So the leaves scorched. You can see the scorch on the leaves. But look at the new leaves that have grown since it's been in there. Look, there's no scorch on the new leaves. So this plant is in great shape, and tulip trees grow very quickly. So we were happy about that. Any questions about any of that?
Yeah. We got something about, does it matter? Margaret wants to know, does it matter what kind of milkweed to plant?
Well, yes and no. They like the common milkweed. Hibiscus, Asclepias syriacus is the field milkweed, but it runs like a crazy thing. They will also lay their eggs on swamp milkweed, which stays in a clump, although it does seed itself around. And they'll lay their eggs on orange milkweed. And there's one other kind, is it called showy milkweed? But
Yeah, I think so.
but they prefer the one that runs like a crazy thing. And that's not something that we recommend that you put into your garden if you want to, if you don't want to have a whole garden full of 5 foot tall milkweeds. You want to put that in the back of the property where you can let it go wild, or you want to plant that in a place that's never mowed. That's what you want to do.
It seems like those yellow aphids, Karen is wondering, like the younger parts of the milkweed plant, will the monarchs lay eggs where the aphids are?
Yes, I just plucked a monarch caterpillar off of a swamp milkweed that was loaded with aphids and moved it over to the young growth on one that didn't have so many aphids. Not because of the aphids, but because it was close to the road. But the aphids of all types. The eggs are laid and the feeding is done primarily on the softer tissue, so you'll tend to see them on the soft growth. When you see them in more places than that, that's a lot of aphids. That's a heavy infestation.
Brenda says she has a lot of swamp milkweeds and the monarchs lay lots of eggs on in her yard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Let's see.
Gretchen is commenting about a old-fashioned lilac that blooms well, but by August the leaves dry up, so it looks dead. That's one of the ones you want to check for borer. We've been talking off and on last couple of months about the borer exit holes and how much that weakens the plant, so that they will often have their leaves all brown and scorched. Rarely kills them. It can kill them, but it rarely kills them. They just keep fighting back.
Marvin says, "Good evening. With fall upon us, I am asking if you have any updates on protecting my young woody trees, especially from buck rub."
You might have seen on the trees we were looking at that we fenced around them, because your best protection is a fence. And we found that we could make it a little more decorative by putting wood stakes around, and then we weave rope around it, not solid, but just at about buck head height. So in this section of about 15, 18 inches, all the way around, we weave rope so that the buck has to tangle himself up in order to get in, which they don't really like to do. It won't stop does and bucks from feeding on the plant, but it will protect the trunk. Next week we'll put a picture of what we do with that, and it's been pretty effective. They'll come and rub their antlers, their itchy new antler, velvet covered antlers on the stakes we put in, but they don't make it to the tree.
Uh, um, Sorry,
Okay.
can keep.
Okay.
Diane says ditto on the milkweed. They had monarch caterpillars all over theirs. They counted 39 on 3 plants a month ago, and now there's still several dozen out there.
Fantastic.
Also, her swamp milkweed has survived quite well in a very dry bed, getting south sun all day.
I have noticed that the swamp milkweed that's growing drier does get more aphids on it. It's as if it doesn't quite have enough resources, where it's not getting a lot of water to really fight off the insects. Doesn't kill it. Plant of the week. Steve and I talked about this, and we had quite a soft spot for the obedient plant, for the false dragon head. This one is the variegated type with a little white edge on the leaf. Kristen made sure that we got a piece of this when we found that it wasn't available in the trade anymore. But the pink obedient plant blooms later, almost a month later than the white form, which is kind of cool. But we decided against that, and there were lots of things we could look at, but we decided on Gilardia, this guy back here. This is the 3rd week of June, and it's coming into bloom heavily. That's blanket flower. It's called blanket flower because the species anyway, Gaillardia, has that edging around it as if you've got a blanket with a soft, silky edge around the outside, like a baby blanket or an Indian blanket. But that was in June, and this is in July, and I'm deadheading it. And this is now, and I could deadhead it again, but why bother? If it's going to keep forming new flowers, regardless of the fact that it's got seed ripening in various places, let that puppy make a splash. And it's available in both the orange with the yellow trim, all orange, all yellow. The species itself, well, they're hybrids. They're all hybrids of Gaillardia aristata, which is, I think, the annual species. And they've crossed it. They've crossed it with perennial species and gotten things like goblin and any number of names. Goblin is this one. It's a short one. And the pollinators like it, so we love things that bloom for a long time. You need to have sun and well-drained soil to grow Gaillardia well. And it's interesting in that people say, well, how can I split it? How can I make more of it? In the spring, if you were to dig the plant up, you would find that its side roots have little thin shoots coming out that may develop if you put them in a separate place, but won't develop if they get shaded by the rest of the plant. We first saw this growing in the wild in must have been the Canadian Rockies when Sonia and I
Yep.
took a horse ride, riding on a trail that I did not dare lean to the side off the horse because it was straight down the mountain below us on the trail. And the Gaillardia were growing uphill of us on a slope about like this, where the water is constantly running from even in the summertime, there's the melt at the top of the mountain, but never staying. It's like a constant trickle of water, but really well drained. And in a more shady place, we're really both sold on the native coral bells called hairy alum root. I'd rather call them native coral bells or maple alum root. This leaf is easily as big as a big maple leaf.
Oh
Huge.
yeah, it's almost as big as the big leaf maple you see out west.
Yeah, Heuchera villosa. And the plants people have been hybridizing it in order to get more vigor and disease and deer resistance from the other colorful leaf coral bells. You'll see some of those in a bit. You might remember when we had Steve, help me. From
Martin?
Chuck Martin. We had Chuck Martin here last fall while we were dividing, and he helped me where my hands don't have the strength anymore to pull these apart without a knife. He was taking apart this clump of hairy alum root. And just like other coral bells, it grows with a neck that comes up with a separate uh, cluster of leaves. And each of those clusters has buds on it that, if buried, become roots, if left up, become leaves. So you just break off the pieces and plant them and make sure that the buds go underground. I find them the easiest thing in the world to divide. You just put a spade in the ground, open up a V by pushing the spade forward, slide the plant in all the way up to its neck, all the way up to here, and let her go. And we made 21 pieces out of that one coral bell, most of which I put out here last fall. You'll understand what all this mess is in a little while. But I put them out here. I said, it's time now along this strip of the driveway, along the edge of the driveway, that we haven't done anything with, to start getting something established. So we'll use them as a nice native ground cover. And this is one of the hybrids. Don't ask me. I don't even remember what the name is. Hybrids with a gold leafed coral bell. They might even have mixed in a foam flower. But that cluster right now, you just took that today, didn't you, Steve?
Yeah.
That's today. This was when I put them out there last fall. I don't know what that blue is. I must have put that blue on there, but I don't remember doing it.
You were showing where other plants might have been.
Yeah. So I the
Something
list
like
of
that.
visions, it was one new plant that I divided and set out, and there you go. In 1 year's time, fill them in. And no deer have eaten them. I found another deer trail, Steve, up between the bayberry and the spruce in the front yard.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny they don't eat the yews, but they don't.
And thinking about plant of the week, I realized that Allium senescens, which was our plant of the week last week, curly chives. I told you that was Allium senescens and that there is a variety called glaucum. Well, those are divisions of this plant that I showed you last week. And Pierre Venerup made me doubt. I thought I bought glaucum. See the blue in the foliage? That's the glaucum. Allium senescens glaucum. Divisions of that plant. And this one is growing where it gets shade for more than half the day. Those divisions I moved out by the edge of the road. Maybe they don't like the sun. And so they're doing that allium thing of the leaves not looking good when they get to the blooming stage.
I would either that or it just stays a little bit moister underneath.
And here's another division of it up by the front of the house, which also gets shade for part of the day. I think it might also be a salt issue by the road. These are the
I would really
Yeah.
think about salt too.
Yeah, I consider weeding a real meditation. That you're doing something that you don't have to think too much about once you've got your cuss words down for the radium weed. You radium weed, you think you're going to get out away from me. No, you aren't. You get to think about things, and if you think and notice, you'll open your brain to the natural vibrations. And I'm not making that up. I don't remember the numbers, but back when horticultural therapy was actually being taught at Michigan State and some other universities, and they've since phased that out. I guess somebody thought it was too icky whooshy to have as a degree. But when they were teaching, there was a study done at hospitals in Pennsylvania, and if you could even see greenery and natural foliage, your heart rate was lower and your alpha waves in your brain were higher. And that has to do with creativity. So while you're weeding, notice things around you.
Suzanne asks, is the tall plant asparagus? I can't remember where the tall plant.
No, the tall
Put in
plant
the-
right here. This one.
I know it's not asparagus, but
This is sea lavender. It's a status relative that is not allowed in California. They must have a problem with it in California. But it's Limonium latifolium. And these all bloomed with little tiny purple flowers that the pollinators just love. And it grows very well in little crevices and in dry places. So I thought I would try it here. Hasn't spread itself around, which is probably good. If it's a problem in some places, I don't want to know it's a problem here. But that's sea lavender. Limonium latifolium. Not linoleum, limonium.
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Steve and I have to write them a few times to get one. Are there other questions?
Just confirming limonium, Lamonium.
Yeah, limonium latifolium.
Just Bernadette and Kathy are working out getting some tree bags from one to the other. Other than
Good.
that, no.
That's great. And it's a great time of year for the calendula too. The self-sown annuals that like the cool weather. If you've been clipping them back, they're taking off again now. Both the seedlings that started late and the plants that you've kept cupped back.
Yep.
And I love being out in the fall. I dislike the long shadows. So on a really sunny day, I get confused. Everything is so many shadows around it. But the light, the way that it comes in is such a special pleasure. And I think people who don't go out don't really notice this. Diane sent this picture. And that's an early morning picture, I think about 6:30 in the morning with the light coming in at the low level that it comes as the sun's arc goes down lower on our sky. About the same time in the evening, I was out with Steve. He was fishing, I was just floating along. And that's lighting up those root flares coming off the edge of the water. Isn't that gorgeous? Just highlighting it. And later in the day, that was later in the day, this is earlier in the day, the light is spotlighting this tree ent. Now, you probably have to have seen Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, or at least the Two Towers, to see.
Or at least read the books.
Right, I think the books did have some illustrations of them, but that's an ent by
Your
my
mind.
dead tree. And Steve too. It took Steve a little while to see it. But this ent is here. His head is leaning forward, his arms are swinging, and his legs in the midst of walking, one leg forward there. like so.
Yep.
And as you go around it, I can't help but think that somebody in Peter Jackson's uh, costume laboratory came up with, saw something like this because it just with the craggy sticks sticking out of them all over the place. Fall light, it's wonderful.
Yeah, they were brilliant in the movie. If you like cool things, just watch the Ents.
Yeah. And Suzanne is saying that it reminds her of the spooky light we experienced during the solar eclipse. I thought that was awesome. When the solar eclipse, don't look up. Don't bother looking up. Just go underneath the Japanese maple and look down. And every single leaf shadow is outlined with an aura around it, just like the sun is. We found that we were running around the client. We were in a garden for a couple of eclipses ago, and all of a sudden the birds got quiet and it got dim, and we remembered, oh, that's right, there's an eclipse today about 2 o'clock. The client came out with us and we just ran from place to place to get underneath another different kind of plant and see what the shadows look like. And I remember my Virginia saying, I can't sure, I'm not sure where to put my feet down. I can't tell where the ground is because it might be a little above the way those shadows are cast. So spooky light. And while I was thinking and reading, and while I do the editing on the video to cut off the unnecessary part at the beginning and the end, and to make sure that it translates onto YouTube. Steve sends out the notice about it. So while I listen to these over again, and while I'm reading, I listen again, and I hear myself say things like last week, I think it was last week, I called yellow sorrel wood sorrel. And I said, no, that's not wood sorrel, it's yellow sorrel. It might not seem like it makes a big difference, but I think we need a section that I'm going to add, like plant of the week, to errors. And an error that I made last week, we were talking about bindweed and what a terrible weed it is, and that it's as bad as Mexican bamboo. Well, it is called Mexican bamboo. It's one of the common names, but that's an accusation that I don't want to make. This plant is Asian. It comes from Japan, Korea, China. And if we're going to call it something, let's call it Asian knotweed. But it is a terrible weed. If you've not run into it, don't fall for it. It can be sold as an ornamental plant. The USDA calls it Fallopian japonica. Other places call it Polygonum cuspidatum. And there is a Polygonum cuspidatum compactum sold as a ground cover. And it would be a ground cover you would never get rid of. I was attracted to it, and when I first started gardening, because it blooms in August with these white fleecy flowers that stand up all along the branches. But it has a root. The root is like bamboo, as well as the stem being like bamboo, hollow and jointed. And that root will go 3 or 4 layers deep and will go 5 or 6 feet out in all directions before it pops up again and makes another crown, where that one's popping up to make a crown. It's almost impossible to get rid of. But it is showy. And if you look, you'll find that this is Minnesota's Department of Agriculture warning people against it. Oregon now has it. It spreads like crazy, but I don't think we should be calling anything Mexican that has nothing to do with Mexico. Not a thing. Look at this. This is now called a fallopia. And they say, oh no, it's very good, it doesn't spread. I'm not even falling for that. Who told me that it did spread for about 4 years and then it took off like a crazy thing? It was someone up near Traverse City. Anyway,
Marvin is wondering, any recommendations for discouraging groundhogs from nesting underneath his deck?
fencing and the
Mhm.
fencing
That'll
that you put against the fence, against the bottom of the deck vertically, but you fold it first so that you can bend the bottom part out so that the groundhog that comes up to the fence and says, huh, fence, and bends down to digs into wire. That's really the only thing that you can do. Some people have told me that mothballs work, but I find that once they dig down under, they're not catching scent. Other people have told me that putting kitty litter down their holes makes a difference. Some people told me that they were using, I don't know, some kind of spray in the holes, but those warrens that they dig go a long way. pretty much like with moles, almost impossible to fill them up with something that's distasteful or dangerous for groundhogs.
Bernadette says coyote.
Yeah, coyotes are good control. We see a groundhog now and then, but we don't have groundhog explosions in our neighborhood because we have coyotes coming in from right across the road.
Groundhog, Bernadette says the groundhog put up a pretty good fight.
I hate hearing those kinds of things. I hear rabbits scream at night and you know that somebody's hunting.
Yeah, hawk got one of our birds last day because
Explosion of feathers,
Yep.
right? Yeah. But that one mourning dove evaded him.
Yep.
So and I remember reading about predators that they might get a kill 1 out of 16 times I mean they put a lot of energy into trying. Our hawk was piping over at 7209 this morning when I stopped by there to get the kids. Um, I found that working along the edge, it was a good time to talk about what a living mulch is, and how practical it is to use this method. I don't know if you've heard of using a living mulch. Um, when we moved in to this house, we have a long stretch down the driveway. I don't know, it must be 80, 90 feet. And it had a couple of arborvitaes, sad creatures in it that someone had tried to plant in between the dying spruces. But otherwise, nothing else was in there. Well, some Houtinia was in there, and some sweet woodruff, but nothing was doing well. And it was not my priority. I said, I'm not going to work on this edge because that's not what we're going to see a lot. I'm just going to try to keep it under control. Oh, and it was full of thistle too. And there are also a little bit of dayflower. Now, I have treated this as a weed in many gardens. It's an annual. It's pretty blue flowers that open up for the middle of the day and they're closed by the end of the day. But the pollinators like them. And I said, okay, I'm going to use that as a living mulch. At our old house, I used a tall native impatiens glandulifera, as a living mulch, which means that you let the seeds fall on the ground, and in the spring you don't weed them out. As long as they're a plant that grows thick and fast, then they'll crowd out other plants. So all along the way, all along this whole stretch, I'm about halfway along the stretch here, going with the road behind me, was nothing. Now, since I've taken out the arborvitaes and we put in beeches that we're going to pleach as a hedge, and when we take the spruces out, which will be a little while because they're still alive and the squirrels use them as a highway. But everywhere in between things that we planted, I left the dayflower that I was using as a living mulch out here, just filled in thick. Now we've decided that Heuchera pilosa that we like so much, I said, okay, it's time now that I've got some time and let's start putting those in there. So those 21 divisions went in here. Now, what I do with a living mulch and what's recommended you do is you let it come up and see it come. Now, this is not it. I couldn't find a picture of the seedlings coming up, but they come up just like this, right cheek by jowl next to each other. This is cottonwood seedlings coming up in a planter. So they come up very close together, and basically you hoe out some of them and leave one here and one 6 inches away and one 6 inches away so that they're nice and vigorous and grow real quickly. You can just let them grow, but they're not going to look as attractive as you want. And then later in the year, so this was last year at the end of June, I thinned them out again. I took them away from where we put the new plants. I said, I don't want you to crowd those guys. The Heuchera are perennials. The dayflower, which is here and here and here and ripped out here, it's an annual. The perennial will win in the long run, but I'd rather that long run be a little shorter. I'd like to see those Heuchera fill in that space by themselves. So I've taken them out. Well, actually, sorry, this is this year. This is the same space last year where I left them in except around the trees. So I'm taking them out and throwing them out. I can use this as mulch now if they haven't gone to seed, or I use them right in that same place. It's a living mulch. Living mulch with blue flowers. I can see them blue here and there, and you can hear the bees working in them. But So I was just clearing around plants, but that left them on the neighbor's side, on Tracy and Bill's side. There's kind of a wall of 18-inch tall plants, which when I looked at it this year, I thought that's not the most attractive thing to have on their side. In the fall, I'll just take them out where I'm going to put in new plants and use them as mulch someplace. Or last fall, as I cleared them out, I cleared out enough space to put those heuchera in there and left the rest to fall down on their own. And they did. They fell down flat. Couldn't have been better. They did, however, do real well further down as they got into more shade from a big mugo pine and spirea, and where they were competing with the sweet woodruff. They don't keep all weeds out. I do walk through once in a while, but it's nice to be able to see the radium weed poking up through and pull it out. But they don't let much get in. This space where I'm getting this, I just did this the other day. I'm making some bays in that wall on the neighbor's side so that they don't have a straight wall, but they have some variety going in and out as they go. But if you look at the fact that the grass stops right here, I know the grass is brown, yours probably is too. We don't water and the neighbor doesn't water. But the grass did not intrude on the bed here. These were too thick and too shaded to keep it out there. Excellent mulch. As opposed to here where they are not. This is an area that I left bare. A few of them seeded themselves in later, but this area, the edge has been lost. The grass has crept in, crabgrass has grown into the edge, and this is only about 5 feet away from the area I just showed you where the grass edge is still there. Further down where the sweet woodruff was competing too much, or maybe the shade is too great for it to be a nice thick living mulch, I've now smothered what's there. I just did this because the grass had encroached so far that I was going to have to dig everything up. I said, no, sorry, I'll just sacrifice that area. So one of the bays that I made, this is a pile of what I've pulled out, and they pull out easily. I think it should be another qualifier for being a living mulch is that you can pull it out easily when the time comes. They pull easily, so I've been pulling and making a bay into the trunk of the first little beech, which has a hedge that I started of vernal sweet pea. And as I pulled them out, there they are on the side, and I would reach down and grab the base and pull out the cluster of stems. I realized that I had 3 vernal sweet peas there, and I thought they were back here. But here's the third one. It's totally covered. So I'm rescuing it. The others had a few in and around them, but not totally covered. And I noticed something as I was doing that the one that was totally covered and laying flat on the ground was green as can be, whereas the ones that were not covered were pale. I think I overestimated how much shade they were going to get from the spruce and the new beech tree, and that these scorched, whereas the others were protected by the mulch, which is kind of a cool thing. Can you see the difference now? This one got forced to lay open, this sprawl open, but it's probably going to come back even stronger than these will next year, which is pretty interesting. Now you can see it. Some things are not a good living mulch. They seed themselves a little too widely. This is the cranberry meridema or sea kale, and the seed stalks that I'm leaving on because that's part of our wild area for the birds and the pollinators. And it does seed itself into the creeping woolly thyme. Woolly thyme is not tall enough and it's certainly dense enough, but the seeds can find their way through little breaks. So living mulch. Does anybody have any others that they use, other annuals that you use as living mulch? Perilla can be used that way, which looks like purple basil, people call it. The impatiens that's native, the impatiens touch me not, capensis can be used that way. Let's see. If you use any others, let us know because that'll share people.
Margaret says chipmunks are multiplying at her sons. Anything to get rid of them? Holes and tunnels everywhere.
Trap them and move them. But
Yep.
when you do that, realize that they're just going to become a problem for somebody else. Anne has passed away now, so I can say this without. Anne trapped chipmunks in her garden, and I was there working, and I could the trap clanged at least twice while I was there. I said, "Wow, how many chipmunks have you got?" 101 chipmunks in the summer. And I said, "Where are you taking them?" She said, "Oh, I take them a good 3 miles away." I said, "I've heard 5 miles." Well, it turned out she was taking them up about 2.5 miles away. And that same year, maybe it was a coincidence, one of my clients up that way had an incursion of chipmunks like he'd never had before. There were holes everywhere. So I don't know that there's much you can do. That's
Okay.
mean.
Bernadette's trying to get a bunch of either a couple hawks or some long-eared owls to come back for some of the rodent activity that she has. Judith Dayflower, aka Jewelweed, looks like it. No,
Yeah.
Jewelweed, the
Jewelweed is the Impatiens capensis, yes. It's
uh,
also called touch-me-not, spotted touch-me-not. Yellow flowers, likes wet places.
um, there was something about humming. Sorry, I'm looking at
It's okay.
for questions, comments about 10 hummingbirds just stopped to rest at a meal at a feeder next to a honeysuckle. Um, Gretchen says that Virginia copperleaf that is abundant or the violets are a living mulch.
Although most of the violets are perennial, and so they make it harder to introduce other things, but they are a living ground cover. I see Marvin is trying to use brown fox sedges.
Yep.
And again, it's a good ground cover.
Strawberries.
Yeah. Strawberries, yeah. There's
What's the difference between living mulch and ground cover?
ground covers are generally perennial. So they're going to come back in the same place where your living mulches are also called cover crops. For in the wintertime, you can use rye. Is it rye? No, it's not rye. Oats. You can sow oats in the annual oats and get a thick cover on your vegetable garden and then turn it under in the spring.
Yep.
Good. This is great.
Would alyssum work? Probably.
It might, if you can get it started early enough and get enough seed out there, it could be big enough, but it's not real fast, and it has the smaller leaves, so it doesn't shade out as much. I mean, worth a try though. I have to give it a try. Got a
Oh,
question.
what kind of trap? Where do you get one for the chipmunks? The live traps.
Hardware stores, they have small live traps that work for chipmunks. But if you're a softie like we are, or like one of our clients was, hire someone to put a trap out and then pay them to come every day and check what's there. If they don't come early in the morning, you find yourself putting water and food out for this animal that's trapped in the summer in your yard. It's hard to do. Carol sent me a note that led me to remember a space alien story about slime mold. She said, "I have this yellow peony. I don't know if it's Varicella or if it's first appearance or one of those, but one of those hybrid peonies, which is great." And she said, there's mold growing on it or something. This is called slime mold. And think of it as the mushroom, the equivalent of a mushroom to a fungus. Slime mold, when it is active enough, creates this stuff. It's not a fungus and it's not an algae. It's something kind of in between. It kind of bubbles up out of what it's decaying. It generally works on decaying matter. It doesn't kill plants, but it does expand when it comes up. And if there are short plants like this oxalis next to it, and it covers them over, it can smother them. And when it's hot, it can also smother things more quickly. But it's not something that's going to kill the roots of your peony. Your peony it's time to cut that peony down. It's got its own problems that have nothing to do with slime mold. See the spots of infection of botrytis on it. Cut it down hard. Don't leave stubs up. Those stubs are going to get into it. But there was and yeah, I think heat has definitely had something to do with your peony too. Scorched leaves, dead center. It must have been 25, maybe 30 years ago, there was a series of good conditions to promote slime mold. It might come in with the mulch. It's just as it dries out, you can you can break it up right away if you want to, but as it dries out, it breaks up and the wind carries it around and it's like spores inoculating a new area. Some people call it dog vomit fungus because people will say it looks like somebody threw up in the garden. But there were good conditions for it. Someplace near Dallas, as I remember, and it was there was slime mold coming up, and as it expanded, just like a mushroom comes up small and opens up bigger, this moves out, and it's a very strange kind of situation that the cells are not really solid walls, but they flow outward. So this stuff was getting bigger and it was creeping up on a telephone pole, and it got news got around that an alien creature was attacking and looking to get into the utility wires, and there were actually newspaper articles about it, alien slime moles. But it does get harder. Sometimes it's a little grayer, sometimes it's a little oranger. But it's not something that's going to kill your garden. It's just breaking down mulch and other dead stuff in the soil. Questions? Okay.
Bernadette never had issues with peonies. Here are two getting powdery mildew. Are they generally susceptible to powdery mildew?
All peonies can get powdery mildew. Some varieties are more susceptible. I grow them, and if they get powdery mildew, I throw them out. There's one that's in this neighborhood that there must have been a gardener when the neighborhood was being developed that passed off divisions of it, but the same one is here and there all down the blocks, and you can tell that's the one when I first saw it in July, I thought, whoa, what is that gray leaf plant that people are growing? So yes, they are susceptible to mildew. You can thin them out, but it's better to just say this variety is not good. We'll just get rid of this.
Margaret was asking what bait to use, and some people have been answering what they use for the chipmunks: peanuts, peanut butter, and
Which is reminding me about your great uncle Axel. Great uncle Axel fed the chipmunks regularly and trained them to come up into the pocket of his work shirt and take a peanut out of the pocket of his work shirt. Steve and I were sitting outside on the picnic bench, and the chipmunk came up, so I handed him a peanut. And we were kind of playing with him. How many peanuts could he fit in his mouth before he ran away and deposited them somewhere and came back? And so he had already stuffed 3 peanuts in his mouth, and we had decided that he could probably take 4. Steve handed him a cashew. He grabbed the cashew, and just like the others, he stuffed it in his mouth, took 2 steps, stopped, took everything out of his mouth, took the cashew out, looked at it, and ate the cashew right there. It was the coolest thing that I've ever seen. So I think cashews might attract them too. Did you?
Bernadette,
Yeah.
wondering if the mildew will pass to healthy ones.
If they're susceptible, they're going to get it even from somebody else's yard. If they're not susceptible, but you put them too close and the air doesn't move well, then even the ones that are somewhat resistant are not immune, so it can pass around. It is a fungus. I had not heard about killing weeds with electricity, electrocuting weeds, but now that I've read about it, I'm wondering if there's somebody somewhere working on a home garden version of this. So this machine, which the farmer sets to be, in this case, just higher than his crop. So this thing out here is just higher than the crop and is an electrified bar, and it's catching all the weeds that have arisen above the crop and is basically burning them like lightning burns. It's superheating them, and it superheats both the stem and the roots, so it kills the plant and kills the seeds, which I think is pretty clever on somebody's part. And is in some way grounded so that the electric current goes back into here. But I look at this and think, well, they came up with weed burners for us. They're going to come up with a weed zapper for us that's an electric, and we get to just electrocute our weeds. I just thought I'd tell you that because I thought it was kind of cool, different way of doing things.
It is 8 o'clock.
Okay, so we'll get.
No other questions have shown up.
Okay, good. I'm going to save.
Will it work on perennial sow thistle?
Perennial sow thistle is one of the plants that gets into farmers' fields, and it's one of the things that they were working on. You might want to take a look and just put in electric weed killer MSU, and you'll get Michigan State's extension bulletin. And there's also a Michigan Farms magazine that has an article about it. But you might want to read about it because it's got a list of the things that seem to work pretty well. It does warn people, though, don't touch your desirable plants with it because it doesn't distinguish between a weed except by the height. So they look at emergent weeds. They call them escaped weeds. If they stay underneath, they don't worry about them. Okay, then we will. We'll talk about staking the ball. Ooh, that'll be a what do they call that? A teaser.
A teaser. A
Yeah,
teaser.
people don't know about staking the root ball, and we'll talk about that next week because we'll be back next week. See if we can get over there.
You will indeed.
Oops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we'll call it a night for this Free for All Friday. We're glad that you came. If you still got
Thank you
questions,
all.
we're always happy to stick around for a few minutes, but we also encourage you, send us a text, send us an email. Look on that Friday's page. Read some of the things that we wrote on the Friday's page, and you'll find our phone number, and you can text us if that's easier than emailing. But send us pictures. And we'll be back next Friday on September 12th for Free for All Friday number 54.
And special thank you to Brenda for joining us.
Oh, that was great, Brenda. Thank you very much for being here. I'm so glad to hear that things are going uphill someplace.
You are very welcome. I'm glad that I was able to this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. It's not too late to subscribe to the weekend walkabouts if you want to do that. It is a subscription, but once a month. We do recordings. We've got 179 of them up already.
I'll wait till she's done talking.
That's our next one is Saturday, September 27th. Forgotten Fall Faces, the best late color and interest for the garden. George Peffidelis says we let him go loose. We said you talk about anything that you think makes the garden look better in the fall, and we'll talk with him about that. So have a great weekend. And
Okay.
who you got?
Therese had her microphone open, so she might have a question.
Okay, go Therese.
Hi, Janet. My sister Denise is here and she wanted to say hi to you.
Hi,
Oh, hi,
sweetheart.
Denise. That's
I
good.
want to thank you because, you taught me so much about gardening that I have a huge garden in the center of my street. It's a big circle. We have it with about 7-foot fences and a door that my husband built. And it turns into a monstrous area.
Is this like a courtyard?
It's kind of in the center of the street. So you have to go around it. They kind of use it to turn around when they pull their boats down.
Oh, like a boulevard. That's neat. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a big circular garden. And my one neighbor, he didn't plant, I planted with him, but he grew the seeds. The first year we put it in, he put in 45 or 50 different tomatoes, plus all this other crap. Came to Michigan for 2 weeks. And I came back and there was a jungle. I couldn't even get it under control.
Yeah.
Just go wild and pick tomatoes. I said, oh my God. So thank you for all your help.
Oh, you are very welcome. I love people who do a lot of different kinds of tomatoes, but yeah, it's easy to go overdo. At the Beverly Hills Community Garden, there was a man who every year had at least 12 kinds of tomatoes. It was just fun watching, but he kept each one quite separate so that he could bag them up and actually put names on them.
Well, I told James, James, you're getting overboard here. This is crazy. Because he does none of the weeding or anything. He just picks the stuff and gives it to everybody. It's like, Denise will take care of that. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
That's the gardeners go overboard. I think it's part of the whole thing. And I don't mind. I think sometimes my neighbors feel bad that, well, she's out there weeding. Did she think that we needed to weed? No, I just like to be out there weeding.
My husband can't understand. Why would you do that? Why do you stay out there and do that? Well, I'm in the sun, I'm with nature, I'm in the earth. Why not?
Okay. All right.
Well, we love the webinar. Thank you guys so much.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Take care, everybody.
Bye now. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.